we read where Christ healed the ones that are out of their mind and everything. But where are the mentally deficient? Where do they stand that are born mentally deficient? And where do we go in the Bible give hope to the parents or those that are related to or have the mentally deficient in their family?
Whoa. Sorry about that, Gene. I have an overactive board tonight, or I am overactive. Now, let me just clarify this. Are you talking about how to encourage the parents of those, or what God's purpose is with those, or?
Yeah. Where do they stand before God?
And salvation too? Are you talking about?
Correct. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Maybe not. Well, actually, salvation, yes.
Okay, because I mean,
because we're all dead and are born dead in our sins and our trespasses. But where do they stand?
Okay, just the short answer, because everybody likes the short answer, and I could go on and on about this. The Bible differentiates between, in fact, multiple times, but the clearest one is in Jonah, that the more we know, the more responsible we are. And so that if someone, Jesus actually said that the one that knows a lot is going to be guilty of more stripes, and the one that knew less is going to be guilty less and have fewer stripes. But with salvation, the Lord actually, this is Jonah 4 is where the age of accountability, if you've ever heard of that term, the age of accountability comes from. The Lord was discoursing, the God of the universe was talking to a wayward prophet named Jonah, 8 centuries before Christ. And Jonah was wanting God to burn up Nineveh. And Nineveh was a huge city of hundreds of thousands of people. And the Lord says to him, Jonah, there are 120,000 kids that don't know their right hand from their left hand. And you want me to burn them all up for their sin? That's very interesting. God constantly sees people by how much they know. And it says in Romans 1 that there were times when the Lord overlooked people's ignorance. And so for that reason, when we get to salvation, there were 2 types of sacrifices in Leviticus. 2 types are the one for the intentional known sin, and then there was a series of sacrifices for people that did stuff that they didn't even know, like walking over a grave. Walking over a grave? What happens if someone moved all the gravestones and you didn't even know anybody was buried there? Yet you were defiled if you walked over a grave in the Mosaic Law. And so there were sacrifices for sins that people did that were trespasses, but ones they weren't aware of. And so the way that we say that severely mentally handicapped, challenged people that never come to any age where they even know what they're doing, and babies, the way we know that they go, now there are those that say only certain babies go to heaven, but biblically, God would say that when Jesus Christ, remember it says that Jesus Christ fulfilled all the requirements of the law. And so his sacrifice paralleled all these Levitical sacrifices, and they were for the intentional and the unintentional sin. And so if Jesus Christ mentally challenged people were born sinners, just like babies, every baby is born a sinner, just like you heard me say this morning 5 times. But all of us are only saved by grace. None of us deserve it, earn it, or did the right thing, as if there's something we could do to save ourselves. Jesus did it all, and he convicts and draws and warms our hearts. Thine eye diffused a quickening ray, as the songwriter said, I woke and rose and went forth and followed thee. But it appears that Jesus had an understanding about children. Remember, he told David that you can't, your child can't come to you, but you can go to him. And there's that concept that babies that never get to the age where they're aware of what they did. Now, the problem is they raised the age of accountability to how old is it now? 12. You know, that's why they do confirmations in the church. They're giving them a long time. No. None of my kids needed to wait till they were 12 to know what they were doing wrong. They can know it very young. But God has mercy, and Christ's sacrifice for those who sinned, they were guilty of the sin, but they didn't do anything, is sufficient for them. But it's a reflection of God's grace, not because, it isn't because they were Jewish kids and they were circumcised so God would have mercy on them. It appears that it was because God is just merciful, and that therefore we would say that severely mentally handicapped people of any age and children would come under the unintentional sin that Jesus' sacrifice would cover, and God can graciously, mercifully cover them. And that's why my mentor and pastor friend John MacArthur said that's why the infant mortality rate, if you know anything about it globally, is highest in the most pagan countries. More babies die in some of these very primitive, godless countries. And he said that the Lord is gathering to himself even that way, and even America's huge abortion rate. Another thing about parents that have mentally challenged, remember Jesus, and I'll come back to that, but in John 9, why was this child born handicapped? It wasn't mentally, it was visually handicapped. And also in the book of Proverbs, the book of Proverbs talks a lot about that the presence of handicapped people around us, for us, is an indicator of our heart, our compassion. Remember how it says in Proverbs, you don't trip the blind, you don't mock the deaf, because their presence is supposed to show whether or not we allow God to bring up within our heart compassion. And that's one of the things that really is a check, and that's why I love our years at Grace Community Church. Johnny Erickson Tada went to Grace Church, and during Bonnie and my years there, every aisle was choked with wheelchairs. And I don't mean just the wheelchairs like this. I mean wheelchairs where the people's bodies were like pretzels. And when John would preach, I always remember this, if they liked the point, they would all go like this on their wheelchairs. They were so excited to be accepted. And I know fire marshals ran them out, but it used to be every aisle, when Bonnie and I started there in the 80s, was jammed with wheelchairs. Okay. Mentally ill, I don't know what else I can say about that, except that we have to be careful not attributing that it's someone's sin. In fact, let's look for a minute at John 9, because this is how I comfort parents of handicapped children. Now, by the way, all of us are handicapped, but some are handicapped more than others. We're all handicapped by sin. But, let's see, chapter 9, look at verse 1. And Jesus passed by, saw a man who was blind from birth, visually challenged. And his disciples said to him, Rabbi, who sinned? Why is this person handicapped? Because usually, any person that had physical or mental challenges, people immediately thought they did something wrong or their parents did something wrong. As if God went around and just zapped everybody that, you do something wrong and I'm going to give you a handicapped child. No. Verse 3, neither this man nor his parents sinned. Gospel of John, chapter 9, verse 3. But that the works of God should be revealed in him. It's so interesting to think about the unchangeable parts of our life, as in a mentally challenged or physically challenged or emotionally challenged, anything that you want, or financially challenged or educationally challenged, anything we can't change in our life. God chose that. And he said that's so that, verse 3, that the works of God should be revealed in him. And then you know the rest of the story, how Jesus anointed him. So, Gene, back to your question. I personally believe that mentally challenged, that everything is ordained of the Lord for a purpose. And I believe that God in his grace and mercy has chosen to save those who never consciously understand the plan of salvation. Because the Lord acknowledges there are some that are not yet even at an age where they understand things, but only, not because God gives them a pass. It's because Jesus suffered on their behalf. That's just my personal belief. I would say that maybe half the theologians, the other half would believe that everybody, whether mentally challenged or baby, is in eternity past elected or dually elected. Either they're elected to hell or elected to heaven. Predestined, actually, and it's called dual predestination. And I don't agree. In fact, dual predestination is not in the Bible. It's only in theology, and it's only in logic. It's not in the Bible. So I disavow something that isn't stated in the Bible. This is stated in the Bible, that God sees those that don't understand. Jesus allowed for the sacrifices for people that did not know they were defiling themselves. And we're supposed to have compassion like God has compassion. So